inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to pick up where we left off on Tuesday. Tuesday, I shared with you some of the presentation we did last week here at the Patriot Academy campus on what to do about Sharia law. This is the hottest topic of the day right now. I mean, people are waking up to realize this invasion is real. We are certainly fighting it in Texas. We have a massively important election happening right now. Early voting in Texas has already started. The election's on March 3rd, the final election day. And there's a ballot measure in the Republican primary. It's Proposition 10 that we should not allow for Sharia law in Texas, and it's huge. It doesn't become part of our Constitution or a law. It's just essentially a suggestion to our legislators to do something about it. It doesn't have the force of law, but it forces the law. In other words, it forces politicians to pay attention and encourages them to do more with regard to this very important subject. So anyway, we had a special event at the campus at Patriot Academy called What to Do About Sharia Law. Had some very special guests in: Frank Gaffney, Nassar Hassan, Bill Federer, and Chris Dunham. And we shared part of that, the very beginning of that, on Tuesday. I want to jump in where we left off and share more of it today. Here we go, taking you to the Patriot Academy campus for what to do about Sharia law. If you missed Tuesday's program, go to afr.net today. Look up At the Core, our radio program, our show that's on one. You can get Tuesdays and Thursdays. You get me. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, you get Walker Wildmon together. It's At the Core on Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock Central Time, and encourage you to listen every day. But if you missed the first part of this program, I encourage you to go grab Tuesday's program and catch up on that. But let's jump in where we left off with what to do about Sharia law.
You were probably I was being generous. I thought you may be about 5 years behind. But talking to people from Washington, D.C., with the International Religious Summit, and coming here, I don't think you've got 5 years.
Wow, wait, you got to say that again. Because I was going to be my first question to you. You predicted my question. How far behind are we, Australia and England? You think it could be less than 5 years?
I believe so, sir. Wow. I believe it's going to be less than 5 years. That is my observation, going from my experience. So allow me to say that, so I'm a Christian convert from a Muslim background, but things weren't like they are now. You have whole swathes. London is 50% Muslim of all sorts. Arab, Pakistani, Somali, Afghanistani, you name them. London has fallen. We've got a London mayor, Sadiq Khan. You look to several of the cities, they are Pakistani, mostly Muslim mayors, okay? You look to the councillors, they are mostly Muslim. They are being voted in by bloc Muslim votes. And so, because they are so proactive when it comes to politics, the ideology of Islam, by the way, it's a 7th century ideology. Allah is not the God of the Bible. Allah is specifically an Arab term for their peculiar 7th century deity. It is not Yahweh. It is not the God of the Bible. It is, in essence, a revamped version of the moon god worship. That's who Allah was. And of course, this dear gentleman has encapsulated so well. Before I just go on, I want to just say concerning Zandani, he's a Marxist and he's an Islamist. He's a very, very dangerous man. And what he failed to go on and say, and he wouldn't dare say this, they slaughtered between 800 and 1,000 Jewish men and boys from the age of puberty. The Banu Qurayza tribe. Muhammad partook in that. They took the females as sex slaves. They wiped out 3 Jewish tribes because they didn't accept him as the Prophet. And when you reference him, please make sure you reference him as the Prophet of Islam. He is not a prophet or the prophet. He is the Prophet of Islam. So that's just my my little quirk. So going back to our story, so I came to faith in 96, and no sooner did I come to faith, one of my closest buddies was also a British-born Pakistani. When I told him I had converted to Christianity, he said, "Do not come near me. Do not knock on my door. We are finished." And so next thing I know, he told one or two other people, and then it goes out like wildfire. There are 35% stronghold Muslims in Bradford. They have over 1,000 mosques. This could be a back room somewhere, houses converted to mosques, Methodist chapels that they've bought, converted into mosques. I can show you on my video. I went to Bradford by stealth about 4 weeks ago because I heard my old church, an Anglican church going back 15th century, was in the process of being converted into a mosque because they encroach, they push everybody out through fear, intimidation, and harassment. The whole area, before you know it, is 101% Muslim. The churches lie abandoned, and they buy their churches and they convert them into mosques. And actually, I will share this with Frank, and he's very welcome to share this with you. So when I saw it, they'd taken all the Christian emblems down, stone emblems down from the building, and they were in the process, again, of converting it into a mosque. So this is the extent of what is going on. So the police, they are terrified of being labeled Islamophobic. They use this word Islamophobia, okay? I was told many years ago that word came about from the Twin Towers attack to deflect from their terrorism, okay, and shut down debate, and to, sort of, again, people are then cowed into sort of debating this thing with them. 47,000 Islamic terrorist attacks since Twin Towers in 90 countries. This is fact. So there is a problem. And their birth rate, 3.4%. The English birth rate has dwindled to 1.1. It used to be 2 live births to sustain their population. They are way down there, 5, 6, 7+ children. And so you can imagine again, as one Algerian prime minister back in 1974 said in the United Nations, Boudemine, he stood up in the United Nations, he said, "We don't need to pick up the sword. We just keep on producing children, we'll win this war through the wombs of our women." And so that is another strategy, okay? So anyway, I just want to say in closing...
Wait, for that, just go have more children, okay? Scholars, let's get busy. Get married, have lots of children. Homeschoolers are our only chance at winning this thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
God bless you, sir. That was my next sort of clarion call. So we have 6. So I tried to boost the Christian population. And so, yes, so these are the strategies that they're using. So I actually, my trouble started after my friend, he then spread the news, and then what happens, you're then scorned, you're frowned upon, they confront you, these young men, angry men. I've never felt so vulnerable when you have a child in your arm and you're surrounded, jostled, spat at, and so the audacity under the noses of the state, it is a failed state. They cared little for me and my family, whether we lived or died. And this escalates then to criminal damage. I've had cars torched outside my home, 6-foot flames shooting out from the car, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I screamed from the pit of my stomach, not because of the car, because knowing how personal this was becoming. The police come along, well, we have no proof. Case closed, off they go. They never recognized us as apostate and apostasy, hatred and violence. And so this then escalates further. Drive-by brickings. We couldn't sit the children next to the bay window for 4 years. You're in a state of clinical depression. The children are depressed. They were young. They were going to a Roman Catholic primary school and a Christian school, and they were being discriminated against by fellow pupils, calling them kuffars, infidel, and kafir and such like, and all these Arabic terms. Our mother said, you are unclean, we can't sit next to you. But yet, they are sending their children to Catholic and Christian institutions. So this went on for 7 years, being pushed and shoved, coming into church, sitting in amongst my family and I in the pews. The Christian brethren, they just didn't sort of follow me. They didn't say, okay, we're going to rally around you. Let's go to the MP, Member of Parliament. Let's go to the police station. So we were forced eventually to move. We became more and more isolated. Why? Fear. Was it Roosevelt who said, nothing to fear but fear itself? And look, the Lord hasn't given us a spirit of fear. So I'm saying, follow me. Where's the Christian cavalry? Nowhere to be seen. We moved from the first property by stealth. My 12-year-old son was humping furniture with me on a trailer, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. 4 of the girls were sleeping in the car, and we're going to the new property, unloading. They're then going to school at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we moved. Everything was okay. Then what happened was that I actually contributed to a Dispatches documentary program. They approached me. They said, look, there is a problem with ex-Muslims. And I felt, you know what, I'm going to exercise my democratic right. What gives these people the right to do what they're doing? And I gave an account, and I aired on the program, which went on national TV. This is in September of 2008. And a demented Pakistani clan family, born and raised like me in England, then Sharia fashion started our troubles all over again. So if I may just bring it up to speed, I walked out my home one day. Police weren't interested. I said, listen, I've had reports. I've had a mosque meeting. There was a young man there. He knows his family, and he just said, they're gonna attack you. Be warned. So the Imam, to his credit, did say to the young man, have you reported to the police? He said, no. He said, well, that needs reporting. But it's the Ummah. It's the Muslim Brotherhood at the end of the day. I can't force them. Possibly they're fearful of repercussions. And what happened, I was walking out to my car one evening. By the way, I was parking at the police station because they smashed my car so many times. The insurance said to me, listen, man, you are a walking liability. We cannot insure you anymore. And no matter where I parked it, they followed me. I was constantly being watched, constantly being monitored. And I would walk away, come home, catch a taxi, leave the car there, go back, and it's smashed to pieces. So anyway, on this particular day in November of 2015, I walked out my property, going to the car, and I did see a car opposite me. And I thought, okay, peculiar. So I went to get in, and before I knew it, I got pounced on by 3 thugs. One stayed in the car, 2 of them came out and ferociously set upon me.
Hate to interrupt here, but we've got to take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
We're back on At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. Again, this is a presentation that just happened last week at the Patriot Academy campus with Nisar Hassan, who we're hearing right before we went to the break, and who we'll pick up with here. Frank Gaffney, Bill Federer, heard from both of them on Tuesday as the first part of the presentation. Today, Nisar Hassan will try to get some of Chris Dunham's presentation and a few of my comments in there as well. We won't have time to do the whole thing, so you can listen to it or watch it if you like at my Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Patriot Rick Green, and just scroll down and look for the special event called What to Do About Sharia Law. Let's jump back in.
And they came, and as they were running and shouting, these thugs then fled. They picked me up, sat me on my step, ambulance carried me away. And I underwent 2 operations to wire up my kneecap and my hand. And my poor daughter, my oldest daughter, rang me before they were wheeling me into theatre because they said, you're high priority, you've got open wounds, infection, we got to get you in. So I stopped the trolley. I said, please allow me to take this call. And they were very good to me. They knew what had happened. My daughter was crying, naturally. Dad, we're coming from university. We're coming home. My oldest daughter and the one just a couple of years younger than her, and I begged them, please, please, don't come. I can't protect you. I'm incapacitated. Look, I've no head injuries. I've no facial injuries. They'll patch me up. I'll come home. Stay at university. What did I do? They caught a coach and they came back at midnight. Can you imagine how I felt? Lying in that bed, not knowing whether we're going to get kidnapped, raped, and I said, Lord, you know what? You said, stand. I've stood, but we don't wrestle with flesh and blood. Stand therefore. And I said, Lord, I can't do any more. Not one Christian, never mind coming to my home or the doorstep to see how my wife was, didn't even phone. We've soldiered on for 20 years through isolation, and they know his family's ostracized him. They're not going to touch him with a barge pole because there is no acceptance, there is no tolerance, there is no middle ground. And so you're sitting ducks. The police signed my death warrant. Again, just like with the grooming gangs, the rape gangs, they are terrified of being labeled racist and Islamophobic. And so it took me several months to get back on my feet. I can't express to you the psychological, emotional damage. And God bless you, Dee Dee. My sister, you don't know what you've done. Because when we got moved out a year to the day by 10 armed police, they wanted to take us to a safe house. I said, sir, I do not trust you. And the sergeant of the armed police took offense and he said, look, I don't know how it's come to this and why it's been allowed to come to this. I agree. It shouldn't have happened. However, we're here to protect you. So I adamantly refused. One of my daughters, we pulled out from her O-level exams from school. We got into a car and they said, we're going to give you a convoy. Promise us every time you come back to Bradford, to your home, that you'll call us, we'll meet you in a 4-car convoy, we'll go to your house, we'll stay with you, doesn't matter how long it is, you can pack, and sort of we'll take you back out onto the motorway, and basically per each month, for 7 months, my wife and I done that. The house didn't sell for 3 years because they were chasing away potential buyers, especially white faces. They assumed them to be missionaries or Christians. They said, we got rid of him, you're a Christian. And the people would be confused, saying, you know, we don't know what you're talking about. They're the most racist, intolerant bunch of people because of their supremacist ideology of Islam. They are the best of people as per the Quran, and we are the worst. And so, if I make, in closing...
And that's in Minneapolis, right? Where you're talking... I'm kidding. But it is in Minneapolis now. But, you get my point.
It would have been the same outcome.
Yeah.
For any Somalian who turned Christian. It is a very hostile, it's a warring religion. And so anybody that leaves Islam, and so I really want to express to you, thank you, Neil, for this. This is the reliance of the traveler. This is, I'm sure you might know this, Krish. You know it, yeah. This is a classic manual of Islamic sacred law. You can buy it on Amazon. However, we did try and look, didn't we, Neil? And for some strange reason, we can't buy it on Amazon. Whether they want to look at your name, whether it's a Muslim name, vet you, and then send it out to you, I don't know. But the reliance of the traveler. Okay. So I've just marked it here. And thank you, Frank. If I'm a bit blurry-eyed, so I'm going to put my glasses on.
And while he's doing that, I want to let you know, tomorrow morning, we're going to have an extended conversation for anyone that is staying overnight if you came in from out of town or you're close to town and you want to come back. Krish is going to be leading these guys in an extended conversation with the scholars. So it's specifically for them, but since we have limited time tonight and so many tomorrow morning, if you want to come back and really dive deeper with these guys, we're going to be doing that. We're going to get back to everybody's going to get another couple of opportunities to speak, but just so you know, I want you to make plans for tomorrow.
I'll just quickly close,
yeah,
Chris,
go ahead.
if I may, Ricky. So here we are, page 595. Apostasy from Islam, Ridda. Leaving Islam is the ugliest form of unbelief, kufr, and the worst. When a person has reached puberty and is sane, voluntarily apostatizes from Islam, he deserves to be killed. Neil, did you have the contemporary book very quickly, sir? So just to confirm that this is a standard manual, actually. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir. So this book is picked up from a Bradford shop. I didn't pick it up. It's saying Islamic law in the contemporary world. Okay? Apostasy, a capital sin. This is a contemporary book. So this is the fate of ex-Muslims, and just in closing and wrapping up, and I'm sorry, Rick, if I've taken a bit more time.
And I want to ask you when we come back to you in a second.
Yeah.
What are we doing? How are all these Muslims that are converting to Christians, how are they surviving? We got to come back to it, though.
Yes, sir.
But be ready to answer that.
Yeah, okay. So actually, please keep us in your prayers. Again, God bless you, Didi. We were marched out. We're off track. I don't exist. We don't exist as a family. All our details, government details, car registration are on lockdown. If police stop me in England for any reason, they cannot trace me. The buck stops with the safeguarding officer at that particular headquarters in the location where I live. And they answer to him and vice versa. This is thanks to past and present prime ministers. We now have a situation in closing. Shabana Mahmood, who has been made the Home Secretary for some months, is an anti-Semite. She's been screaming and shouting several years ago, closing down supermarkets with a mob because Sainsbury's supermarket sells Jewish products. She is now the Home Secretary, and there is talk of her becoming the first female Muslim Prime Minister. When that day happens, you'll see me here. So the Legalize Apostasy campaign is to raise awareness. But I have a grave passion for further ex-Muslims. But I won't go any further because you're going to ask me a question.
But it's such a warning to us. I mean, guys, I don't have to emphasize it. I mean, what he's saying is here. This will be our communities and our country in less than 5 years. He's saying, I was thinking 20. He's saying potentially less than 5. So Krish Dunham, who, again, as I said, is the dean of our Patriot Institute and very good friend, he teaches all the world religions to these scholars so that they know how to defend, and they know how to defend the Christian faith, and they also know what to expect from these things that we're dealing with. So he's taking them through a much deeper dive into all of this. Go ahead, Krish.
Okay, so what we'll do is, you've heard the geopolitical side from Frank. His ex-boss, Ronald Reagan, was president when I came to the United States. And incidentally, just a sidebar, today is exactly 40 years to the date, February 10th, 1986, that I walked into the United States Embassy in New Delhi to file my papers to come to America. So it's one biblical generation, and here we stand. I saw India go that route. India stood its ground when we had that separation. That's a different story. Just to give you, I try to use anecdotal reference points. So we have a Pakistani here and an Indian here who would not get along with each other on any other ground except under the guise of our Holy Father. And for those of you who have had your head in the sand wondering whether Islam is here and Sharia law is here, just to give you context, that's 9/11, I'm 7/11. So we got that covered as well. So just to give you a little sidebar. But I want to give you the context from a Christian perspective. Look at all of the world. Look at all the major players now which are called Islamic countries. Iraq used to be Babylon. Iran was Persia. Ethiopia was Kush. Egypt, all of these places were Christian countries. And today they are Islamic countries. So there is no issue of America at one time was a Christian nation. Now that ship has sailed. What you're fighting with here is an ideology. It's not a religion. If you just look, and I'll give you the pointers, and I follow anthropology. This is how I understand human movements. In 2007, a young senator who the entire nation wanted, because you as white people did not want the brand of racism anymore, so you said we're going to embrace this young senator from Illinois. And for some reason, you classified him as America's first black president, and I don't know how that works. His mother was a white woman from Kansas. The great Rush Limbaugh always called him by his full name, Barack Hussein Obama. When he was speaking to the Washington Post, as a senator aspiring to be president of the greatest nation on God's green earth, he said the sweetest sound in the world is the Islamic call to prayer at sunset. La ilaha Muhammadul Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. That was said by a senator, and we overlooked it. Then you had another senator who wanted to be president, Hillary Rodham Clinton. She went into a gas station in St. Louis and said, I guess I have to speak with an Indian accent here. And you overlooked it because we wanted the first women to shine. I never thought I would say it in the same sequence. That when I landed in America, I thought the greatest existential threat would be when America turned its back on Christianity. Halfway through, I said, okay, they're turning their backs and Islam is here to stay. I'm telling you this, I never thought in my 40 years in this country that I would say this. The greatest existential threat to America is Islam and white liberal women. Whatever guilt complex you got going on, and let me put it this way, whether your ancestors came on the Mayflower and landed at Plymouth Rock, or whether they came in a Plymouth to Little Rock to work at Mayflower, I don't care. The question to ask yourself is America worth saving? As a young immigrant who came to this country with $9 in my pocket and heard the Shining City on the Hill speech from Ronald Reagan. I've had the privilege of being in Reykjavik, Iceland, outside that building. I've traveled all over the free world, 80 countries and counting. And I will tell you this. I think he's being generous with 5 years. I grew up in India, in southern India, in a place called Hyderabad, which was the only Muslim-dominated part of the original Deccan. Now, India had 6 centuries of Mughal rule. When you look at what wiped out Christianity from all these countries, it was the advance of the Ottoman Empire. But within the Quran and its teachings in the Hadith and its corollary and the abrogation which they give saying he evolved more and what got from Angel Gabriel has changed over a period of time, whatever you want to believe, whichever book you want to pick up. Here is one thing for fact. Land that is once taken in the name for Allah will always be retaken. It will always be a fight. And now they're here. Dallas, my hometown for 40 years, when he said 1,000 mosques in Bradford, do you realize 65 have been built in the greater Dallas metropolitan area in the last 2 years? And they don't call them mosques, they call them Islamic centers. And one of my Christian friends who runs a bank wept openly with me saying, I messed up. They came to me saying they just wanted to build a school. And I, as a Christian, had to give them a loan. Brother, I think, and I thought to myself, how many of us have been hoodwinked at so many levels? So I'll close with this. Remember what Bill said, and I've got a different formula for it. First, they emigrate. You ask any Muslim, why you want to go to a place and make that the living hell you left? They said, why would I go someplace which is already Muslim? My job is to proselytize and be an apologist for Islam. First they emigrate, then they integrate. You know, when someone comes to you and says Islam is a religion of peace, yeah, that's like saying I'm a pro-ransom kidnapper. Sounds good. Makes zero sense.
Last break of the day. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
We're back around At the Core. Thanks for staying with us. We're going to jump right back into our presentation on what to do about Sharia law.
First they emigrate, then they integrate, then they infiltrate. On Frank's show, they named a couple of people, and I about gasped, because I recognized those names from my own backyard. 2 people sworn in on the Quran at the Texas house. First they emigrate, then they integrate. They become lawyers. See, you're not dealing with the ash heap of society. You're dealing with educated people. You know, they say if you take a common crook and you put him in prison, you may be able to rehabilitate him. But if you take an intellectual and put him in prison, you've now taught him how to come back and steal the whole train. First they emigrate, then they integrate, then they infiltrate, and now they indoctrinate. The headlines, Wiley High School standing up there giving all the women hijabs. Wiley, which was an outpost, it was where I would not go because it was too far for my sales call.
It's where I graduated high school. That's literally my school, and I'm watching them. Yeah.
And then they hand out these goodie bags. And our kids, you know, it's fascinating. Oh, it's free. I'll take it. And here's the thing we missed. It became headlines because a Republican kid on campus pointed it out, and it made headlines. It went like wildfire. That same principal allowed the same thing last year. Nobody said anything. Well, if you want to look at how fast this thing, just go to Dearborn, Michigan, and see whether you'll get past anything there. So I've traveled enough to realize that as a culture, you're not going to assimilate. The love thy neighbor stuff is fine. But be very careful of one thing. And this I ask you as an immigrant who came here legally all those years ago. I met Jesus Christ in this country. A man named Zig Ziglar led me to Christ here. He told me to be the last salesman for this country. And I tell our kids every day, I said, I'm closer to meeting my Lord than trying to impress you about him. Because, folks, you know who we have to apologize to and why you need to wake up and get involved in the fight? Is those kids. We inherited a country that his boss gave us. The Cold War was stopped. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and it crumbled. Happened, and we took it on our watch, the great Ronald Reagan. Man, imagine what he is seeing as to what he fought for. That's who we need to apologize for. I'm sorry I inherited a better country. You know, they need to see us in the trenches. Our children are never going to be 100% of the problem, but they are 100% of the future.
So many directions we could take this. And I know y'all have a ton of questions. We've got a podium over here, and they're going to have a microphone. If you'll get in line, if you want to ask questions. Christian and I want to ask these guys questions. Bill, I want to come back to you first. How is this spreading so fast when it is so evil and so awful? Why do women subject themselves to this? Why? How did it, in history, how did it grow so fast? And how is it possibly happening in a modern world?
Well, thank you. The movement that swept through North Africa was called pietism or monasticism, where if you really become a Christian, you should withdraw from worldly things, including politics. And so Christians had taught themselves not to be involved. And so the Muslims invaded Egypt in around 640 AD, around that time. And the Coptic Christians were being persecuted by the Byzantine Christians. And the Muslims come and they side politically and say, we'll help you drive out those Byzantines. And the Coptics say, really, you're that nice? Well, they come in and they drive them out, and then they stay, and then they end up conquering the Egyptians. And so there was a Sultan al-Hakim, like we got Hakim Jeffries. Well, al-Hakim cut out the tongues of anybody caught speaking Coptic in the year 1000 AD. And he eradicated it. They would listen at the door if the police would kick in, and anybody caught speaking Coptic, they'd cut out their. Some towns had piles of tongues. Anyway, and then they swept across North Africa because the Christians were so spiritual they didn't want to defend their culture. And then you had in the year 711 a Muslim general named Tariq. Goes into Europe, and he lands at a mountain, and the Arabic word for mountain is Jabal, so they call it Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar. And so 80,000 Muslims crossed over Strait of Gibraltar. They bring their scimitar swords, their Arabic horses, and then Spain was a bunch of kingdoms that didn't get along. And so politically, they would conquer one kingdom, and the other ones would stand back. Then they conquer another one, then the other ones would stand back. They basically would play one party. It's like a pinball machine. They'd bounce to one side, one party. They'd be, we're Democrat, we're Republic. But they're always moving toward this goal. And so in 10 years, they conquer all of Spain. They cross the Pyrenees Mountains. They conquer southern France. And they're finally stopped outside of the battle at Tours, outside of Paris, in 732 AD, just 100 years after the death of Muhammad in 632 AD. First, and if you ask them, read their history, they'll say it's all defensive. Because if they feel threatened, they feel justified in attacking you. And so this is the first century of Islam. So we say, let's go back to the early church. They had it right. They were so close to Jesus. Well, their first century is military conquest. And then they conquer Syria. Did you know Syria was the first country that was completely Christian, evangelized by the Apostle Paul? The name Christian was first used in Syria until Caliph Umar conquered it. And then the Turks convert to Islam, and they conquer into what is today Turkey. All 7 churches mentioned in the book of Revelation were wiped out by the Turks. And the Greek Christians begged the Catholic Christians for help. They sent help. It's called the Crusades. Go on from around the year 195 up to the 1300s. When the Crusades end, the Muslims pick up where they left off, and they conquer Constantinople, the largest Christian city in the world. And they take the largest Christian church, the Hagia Sophia, 165 feet high, 102 foot across dome, 4 acres of gold mosaics, and they turn the largest Christian church into a mosque. And then once they conquered Constantinople in the year 1453, it ended the land trade routes from Europe to India and China. Remember Marco Polo in the 1200s went from Venice, Italy to China, worked for Kublai Khan? Well, the Muslims conquered Central Asia and then conquered the trade routes. And then when Constantinople falls in 1453, that's when Columbus set sail in 1492 looking for a sea route to get to India and China. And he sees some people and he thinks he's in India, so he names the people Indians and the name sticks. We would never have called Native Americans Indians had it not been for Islamic jihad. And so then you have the Muslims surround Vienna, Austria, 1529, and the Martin Luther decides to start the Reformation, and the King of Spain is faced with this double dilemma. He's got this Muslim invasion and the Reformation, and he tries to stop both. But then the King of France doesn't like Spain, so what does the King of France do? Francis I, 1500s, he goes over and makes a treaty with the Ottoman Sultan. And so now you have France for 3 centuries helping the Ottoman Turks against Spain. And so they'll play one party after the other. It's like going into Medina, 3 Jewish tribes play them against each other. They'll come in to a country and they'll find out who the political parties are and they'll side with one against the, oh, you want to join? So we're down in Sugar Land, Texas, and Dr. Andy Woods, and he says that a whole lot of the Muslims are joining the Republican Party. And they're like, oh, great, you can help us against the Democrats. Like, no, they have their own agenda. And so, anyway, so I wanted to make a comparison. The word Islam means submission to the will of Allah. A Muslim is one who has submitted, and they think there'll be world peace when the whole world submits to the will of Allah. So it is a religion of peace. It's just their definition of the word peace is different than ours. Our peace is different. It was getting along. Their definition of peace is when you conquered all your enemies. There's nowhere left to conquer. There's peace. And so the world's divided into the Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Harb. The house of Islam is the house of submission. That's already submitted. The Dar al-Harb is the house of war. It's supposed to be at war because it's in the process of submitting. So they see the world as Muslim and going to be Muslim. Now, a moderate Muslim thinks the world's going to submit to Allah later, maybe in the distant future, maybe at the end of the world, maybe it's even figurative. And since to them it's so far off, they really don't think about it. They just want to live their lives, and they're happy to be under the Western umbrella. The fundamental Muslim thinks the world's supposed to submit to Allah now, and they're really excited. They want to help make it happen. The dilemma for the West is when we show ourselves really, really nice, the fundamental Muslim views that niceness as weakness and takes it as an invitation to attack. So when we bend over backwards thinking, oh, they'll reciprocate. They see us bend it over backwards. Allah's given us our enemy. Right? And so Patrick Henry faced this. He said, our mild religion teaches us that as individuals, we must turn the other cheek. This is how we must act as individuals. But when you apply this to patriot, you cannot do this. You must defend your country. And then we face this again in the Cold War, where communists were coming into America, taking advantage of the freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly to pass out flyers to overthrow America. And Eisenhower said, no group could use the Bill of Rights as a privileged sanctuary from which to wage war to destroy the Bill of Rights. And so there's freedom for all religions in America, but Islam is not just a religion. It's a political system and a military system because Muhammad was not just a religious leader, he was a political and military leader. What if the Bloods and the Crips and the MS-13 gang and the Tren de Aguan, if I pronounce that right, what if they simply call themselves a religion? Oh, MS-13 is a religion? Yeah, they have their belief systems. Like, okay, well, I guess you can take over the neighborhood. And you can have your own version of Sharia law. You can have your own justice system, and you can. If somebody joins the gang, they get the booty, and if they leave the gang, you kill them. Right? It's a gang dynamic, and you get to have your colors like the green and the 8-pointed star that they're putting on the Minnesota flag and the Springfield, Missouri flag, and then you have your dress, right? Gang colors and your bandanas. Well, they have their gang dress, right? And so just think of it as Muhammad was, in a sense, in Arabia they had gangs, they had tribes. And he was a leader. He was like a gang leader. He just promised booty in the next life. That's good. And so we have to realize that there is the strength to stand up. One other thing people say, well, Christians kill people too. What about all the, let's not compare followers. Let's compare founders. The two largest religions in the world, Christianity is a third of the world. Islam is 20%. And so Jesus never killed anybody. Muhammad killed an estimated 3,000 people. Jesus never owned slaves. Muhammad owned slaves. He was a white Arab that owned black slaves. Jesus never married. Muhammad had 11 to 22 wives, including Aisha, the 9-year-old. Jesus never tortured anybody. When Muhammad conquered Khaybar, he stretched the chief out on the ground, kindled a fire on his chest. Jesus didn't force anybody to follow him. Multiplied loaves and fishes, had a crowd following him, wanted him to make him king. They wanted free lunch. And he said something difficult, and they walked with him no more. He didn't run after him with a sword. He said, no, he turns to Peter. You want to go too? There's the door. Jesus himself never forced anybody to follow him. Muhammad said, whoever changes his Islamic religion, kill him. The Ridda laws. Jesus forgave insults. Father, forgive him. Muhammad avenged insults. A man in Mecca made up poems making fun of Muhammad, had 2 slave girls reciting the poems. Muhammad was insulted by the poems, so when he conquered Mecca in 630 AD, he ordered that man and the slave girls killed. And so Jesus taught God was our Father. In Islam, it's blasphemy to call Allah your Father. Jesus taught we're children of God. In Islam, it's blasphemy to call yourself a child of Allah because Allah took no wife and has no son. Jesus taught we're made in the image of God. In Islam, Allah has no image. Jesus taught to have a personal relationship with God. John 17, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. In Islam, it's blasphemy to even want to have a personal relationship with Allah. He is transcendent and unknowable. Even in the next life, you'll never meet him. The first 3 centuries of Christianity, 10 major persecutions. Christians were fed to the lions. They never led an armed resistance against the Roman Empire. First 3 centuries of Islam, they conquered from Arabia to Paris and all the Middle East and all the Turkey. And so Jesus said, go to a town. If they don't receive you, shake the dust and leave. Muhammad, go to a town. If they don't receive you, wage war on the town. And you get your 3 choices. You become a Muslim, you get killed, or you can become a dhimmi, a second-class citizen where you pay taxes to the Muslim. And so you have to ransom your life once a year with a jizya tax. And if you can't pay it, you're no longer part of the agreement. And so when they come into a country, they expect the kafir infidel to pay them. And so I saw an interview with a Joram Chudare. He started Islam for UK years ago. He's on TV, and he said, we've had enough of democracy and man-made law, call for a complete upheaval of the British ruling system, demand full implementation of Sharia in Britain. And the interviewer said, well, you know, you're living off the Muslim. So the Muslim man will come in, have his 4 wives, and then have them in their own apartments and send them down to the welfare office to get the checks. And he visits the wives, and the more kids they have, the larger the checks get. And so she said, don't you feel bad? She goes, no, Allah allows us to live off the infidel while we are subduing them. Like a heresy site, suck the blood. Now, the moderate ones love to be under the Western umbrella.
Bill, that last part, I just want to take that one home back to Minneapolis, Somali daycares and everything else. They think we're the idiots. They think they would be idiots if they didn't take advantage of us. And Bill, another takeaway from what you said, Chris got the next question, another takeaway from what you said, because Frank called it a clue in the intelligence world. When you said that about Eisenhower, how he said you can't hide behind the Bill of Rights in order to destroy the Bill of Rights. That is part of our strategy going forward right there. We've got to get people to understand that we're not going to let them hide behind the First Amendment freedom of religion in order to take away all of our freedoms of religion. That's a very important part of the strategy going ahead. Chris, go ahead.
Actually, we're not going to be able to get to that question today, folks. We are out of time for today, but you can get that entire evening, What to Do About Sharia Law, on my Facebook page. You can watch it live, or on my X channel, or on our YouTube channel at Patriot Academy. It's the Facebook page is Patriot Rick Green. Out of time for today. You've been listening